Paws Up Podcast. This is episode 11. We are just one day away from opening day of FIU Baseball. We are here as always, joined by my co-host Jake Gibson. Jake, what's up?
We have hey! I hope y'all are loving the Vice theme.
We got a cool Vice theme going for Vice Week, and we have the perfect guest today for to talk some FIU baseball. We have Jonathan Mayer, who is the Panther Now writer. He does broadcasting on the radio for what's the outlet called again? It's a lot of numbers.
39, 32.
It's you got it. Student radio. Yeah.
Student radio. There we go.
All right.
I would follow Johnny on his Twitter, which is linked, which is right there on the screen. And let's get right going. Jake, you have the first question.
Yeah. So before we begin, just want to say, hey, Johnny, want to quickly ask because for those who don't know, Johnny and I go way back to the old Panther Now and again MMC 3932C days. Just as a quick question, how are those programs doing, Panther Now and 3932? What do you think?
Well, actually, I just this semester left Panther Now. All good things, but I'm actually joining the media relations staff at FIU.
There you go.
But hearing good things about Panther Now, obviously they do great stuff. But the program's doing really well with the radio thing. I actually got my most listeners ever. We got our most listeners ever back on Wednesday. It was FIU Stetson, so we averaged like 60 listeners. We were the only stream there, so it was pretty cool. People and hopefully tomorrow, because I know that for baseball, I know baseball does very well. So excited for baseball.
Baseball does do well, and yeah. we would know, Johnny. We were fortunate enough to call a bunch of baseball games to the point where we got the green light to go on the road, head to a Marklight Field, and cover FIU baseball from the home of the Hurricanes. That was super sick, and we might be doing it a couple times this year, as the season progresses. But we'll take a look at the season schedule later.
And something to quickly note before we keep going: Johnny is the first ever guest we've had multiple times, so we got to give him props.
For that. Good job, Johnny. That is absolutely lights out.
And well, now we could actually start.
Lights out! Lights out!
Good job.
I wasn't gonna forget.
Coach Mac.
So
we have to do it once every episode.
It's become a priority, So, Johnny, you and I saw our fair share of FIU baseball last season, and I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. It was not the best year for the team. They did have some ups, but they had quite a bit of downs, and as a result, they lack the head coach they had last year, being Mervil Melendez, who you were absolutely high on for most of his time here at FIU. He did bring some good memories, but as you said earlier, all good things must come to an end with a 16-34 record. So it's the day before we move on. So before we move on, let's take one look back at last year. What were your overall thoughts on the 2022 campaign?
I think when you look at the team, you look at the pieces they had. A lot of those pieces are back this year. I think from an offensive standpoint, you talk about a guy like Alex Sanchez, who was really solid. A couple of the infield with Dante Girardi, Steven Odina, Robert Sudolongo. A lot of guys improved their seasons. I just think that you look at the offense. There were times where it didn't really congeal they didn't mesh very well. I think there were guys having peaks at good times. Some others didn't. Nothing clicked. I do think though the pitching struggled a bit. There really wasn't consistent. Besides Patrick Pridgeon, who was the Friday night starter, who now got drafted by the Tigers last year. Congrats to him. Obviously, good to see that. But other than that, really, there wasn't a lot of consistency within that pitching rotation. A lot of guys in and out. I think the pitching was the problem. With Nier a little up north of 7, and I think this team, it's a lot of pieces back, adding a lot of transfers. But expectations coming in were high. But looking at how season ended last year wasn't what really we wanted. And I think FIU baseball is obviously a great program, and I think they always have the expectations to be well. We didn't see that met last year.
Yeah, an incredibly nagging problem for FIU last year was When they lost frequently. They got on losing streaks for a good chunk of the season. They had, to my knowledge, they had a 5-game losing streak, a 9-game losing streak, a 6-game losing streak, and they ended
an 11-game losing streak?
on a 4-game losing streak.
There was an 11-game losing streak, right?
I believe so. Yeah. An 11. It wasn't 9. It was 11. Correct.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
And Johnny and I were part of that too. They got swept by UConn. They lost to South Florida. They got swept by Jacksonville, and they were beaten by University of South Florida and the University of Miami. That was a really rough stretch of the road. And during that losing streak,
I was saying non-conference last year was very. You look at UConn.
It was great. Yeah.
It was a very tough non-conference for the first couple of weeks. I mean, the last couple of series, which were really tough for them.
Yeah. Obviously, they opened up great against the University of St. Thomas of Minnesota Tommies, and if you've never heard of that school before, then that's probably why they did so good against them. But after that, it got tough real quickly. Seton Hall and Michigan, 2 very good programs, and then South Florida and UConn. Like I mentioned, UConn's no joke when it comes to baseball. What would you say, Jonathan, was and we did this for football, so let's take a good idea from the past and turn it into something for baseball. What would you say was the highest point of the season last year, and what would you say was the lowest?
I think highest point you can look at the way they started out. It was 6-0 was their record. Won their first 6 games. The coming off, I think it was Seton Hall. And you thought, this team was pitching well, offense, was playing efficient. But then, it was really the early on and then losing to Michigan and that kind of pitching struggled a bit and that started it. So I think that's a high point. I think the low point to me was, I think, the University of Miami game in Coral Gables.
Yeah.
It was a 17-1 loss, 16-1 loss. There was a lot of issues. The way they played, really, there was an incident where nearly the benches could have got a little messy. Yes, a guy got hit by a pitch and, a little chippy there, but I think that was a low point for this team. And, look, that was last year. We have a new coach in this year. So I think, looking back to the past, it's tough to look back, but I think looking forward now, a lot of excitement with what
I got to say, Johnny, because that was a fun day, by the way, getting to go to Coral Gables, having those Mark Light milkshakes, just kind of seeing the atmosphere there at the University of Miami was very cool. The game did not turn out to be cool, obviously, but something I'm interested in was that you didn't pick this game to be the lowest point of the season, and I'm shocked you didn't, because you withstood all of it. You were there from the start to the beginning, and that was the game on March 13th at home against the Jacksonville Dolphins. That went all the way to the 20th inning. That FIU quite literally dropped the ball, and Jacksonville won by a score of 9-4. And Jonathan Mayer broadcasted that entire game.
Well, I got there at 11 o'clock. First pitch 12. I got there 11. Left at 6:30.
Well, at least it wasn't a night game. You got lucky.
Yeah, at least I know Alex Aguirre. He was there with me, actually.
Yeah. It got turned into a night game. That's how long it went.
Well, actually,
I would say that was the lowest point in my 4 years at FIU watching baseball. That was the lowest point. I did not go to the game
to 20 innings, dude.
It was just one of those cases where the game would not end.
Yeah, there were times though in that ball game where I think FIU had runners on second and third with less than 1 out or less than 2 outs. They couldn't get the run in. But yeah, by 11th, 12th, 13th inning, you get used to it. So this game, you keep going on, and then I think at the top of the 20th, the guy for Jacksonville hit a grand slam, and the kind of all the momentum out of that game. But that was a crazy game. Luckily, it was an afternoon game, because if it was a 7 o'clock game, think about it. It would be at 2 a.m. So
how do you even end the broadcast like that? In the middle of the game, you're it's getting late, guys. Gotta go.
Honestly, I could have just left, but you know what?
No one would have blamed you, but you got that dog in him. That's why he stayed until the end.
So let me get this right. Johnny's the only one who stayed.
Pretty much. How many fans were there at the end of the game, Johnny? Do you remember?
Alex Aguirre, shout out. He was there.
Shout out. We'll see him soon.
Yeah. But like looking around, what was an estimate of the fans that stay there at the end of it?
Everyone stayed. It was, a lot of the parents and families and friends. Everyone stayed. So I was surprised, but everyone was getting like a little bit, kind of, when are we when are they gonna score? And then they scored in the 20th inning.
And by the way, this was after dropping 2 games to Jacksonville. So this is the end of the triple header against the Dolphins.
I'm not correct. The longest game in NCAA is 26. So
yeah, they were shockingly close.
Let's get to 26. I thought,
that's what you were thinking. I remember you telling me that as soon as it ended. I was like, damn, I wish it could have gone a little longer. Breaking a record at least.
But 20 innings is still crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so, I want to keep my eyes on 2022. Just one more minute. We got to talk about Mervil Melendez. How would you assess his tenure at FIU? You were basically here for a lot of it, so.
I mean, I only for me was really two seasons. So
2 seasons? Okay, I thought you were for longer.
I know, because I was here.
He's a young boy, Kevin.
He's pretty young, yeah.
2021. So yeah,
I'll be here for all of Rich Witten's tenure, so that's cool to say.
Exactly.
Hey,
and Skip Schumacher's.
No, but I think with Coach Melendez, I think coming in, he had a lot of promise from Bethune-Cookman, and he brought in really good recruiting classes. That's a lot of what we'll talk about is a lot of the guys that are in the recruiting years, Odina, Figueroa, they're all from that recruiting class. So he brought the guys in. I just think that the players he brought in, but how it came onto the field, the wins didn't come what you were expecting, but, he did nice things here, improving some facilities around the ballpark. The best for him, obviously his son is right now catcher with the Royals. And,
MJ, yeah.
The MJ. So that's cool. But yeah, nothing is the best. But yeah, just a tough tenure, but he did bring in some players that are here right now that we'll see here starting tomorrow.
MJ Melendez is a stud, by the way. That kid's gonna be really good. Yeah.
And I the thing I will say about Mervil, because I got to see him for a few years as well.
You saw him here longer, Jake, right?
Yeah. I saw him for about 3 or 4. Yeah, pretty much. He was here. How many years was he here? Mervil was the coach. 6. Yeah, 6.
7, like 4 or 5 years, something like around
so around that time. I got to see him for most of his time here, and in general, you were kind of hinting on that, Johnny, that for his first few years at FIU, I think his recruiting was horrible. His first few years, he slowly got better around the tail end of his career and leading up to last couple of years, where they brought in, admittedly, some really great players and some recognizable pieces on the talent that are returning, such as Dante Girardi, Alex Sanchez, and Mario Fernandez. Just only a few of some of the great players that he was able to bring in. It's funny because it reminds me of football, and it's strange how many similarities there were to the departure of one coaching staff between baseball and football to the brand new ones who are just trying to fix the wrongs that the old coaching staffs had. And of course, I saw all of Butch Davis's time at FIU. It was not great. They got one bowl win. That was cool. But aside from that, it was atrocious. And to see, of course, now Mike McIntyre leading the troops for FIU, I got to be excited about that. And to see Rich Witten, and if you look at Rich Witten's time at VCU and what he was able to do there, you can't help but feel a little excited for what he brings to the table.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Let's finally close the book on the 2022 season, and thank God. Let's move on now to 2023. It's always great to move on from a new season to the next, and of course, there are storylines with baseball this year, and what bigger one than the departure of Mervil and the addition of Coach Rich Witten? So tell me, Johnny, what do you think about the hire? Who were you initially thinking would replace Mervil? And what are your thoughts on Rich?
And just kind of to expand before you start, who were the initial candidates entering? Was there a big name that maybe a lot of people knew? And then how did it end up being Rich Witten?
I do recall that like a lot of people applied. I think 30 to 40 people applied for this job. I do know that the Miami-Dade Community College coach applied for it. I know I read some things. Maybe, they're looking at the associate coach at Miami, the coach at Las Gutierrez, NSU. There were a bunch of names across the board. But I remember, hearing what Scott Carr said. He wanted some guy that was a proven winner. And Rich Witten checked all those boxes.
Yep.
And when I saw the name, obviously we always do those Google search and see his bio, and looking at where he came from and what he was able to do at all the schools he's been to. You really are excited for it. He comes from VCU, from the A10 conference, that they're the top team in the Atlantic 10. You look at who his head coach was, and Sean Stifler. He now goes to Notre Dame, so that's a really good coaching tree that he gets to be a part of. So VCU was great. You look at, he was at Miami for a season, at UCF. He played at Coastal Carolina, which Kyle Russell went there. So that he played very well, a very good. He's part of a really good team. So I think he's been places where he's won. And I think Scott really knows that he's excited for the hire. He's excited to watch Rich Wooden coach out this year. But I think it was a big hire for them, just getting somebody that who's young. He's like 34 years old, but who's been with proven programs so far in D1 baseball.
And VCU, that's a college that not many people instantly recognize, but it's these small colleges that can turn coaches into great leaders, and obviously players can transfer to bigger colleges, et cetera, et cetera. And again, when most people think of VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, go Rams. I mean, my mind instantly goes to 2011 when their basketball team made the Final Four. That was insane to see that happen.
FIU coach Joey Rodriguez was the guy. So shout out Coach Rodriguez.
You're going?
Yeah. So I was just going to quickly say on the topic of Mr. Witten is that, as we've seen in the practices and meetings, obviously I believe you've been able to talk to him a couple of times, Johnny. He just seems like another down-to-earth kind of guy that looks like he already knows how to rally troops. And it's going to be interesting to see how the season progresses. Maybe we'll get him on the show here and there. We'd love to, Kyle, if you're somehow watching this, or Kyle, Rich Witten, if you're somehow watching this, hey, we'd love to have you on board. You would be the third head coach we've had on the show now.
We had almost all of them, dude. We're missing.
We're collecting them like infinity stones. First the head coach of soccer, and then football. Just checking out all the sports. Now we got baseball coming up. So excited to see what Rich can bring to the table.
All right, Johnny. So just like Dion said, he's bringing his luggage, and this is exactly what Rich Witten did. He brought a couple. I think he brought two guys. He brought in Marcus O'Malley, and he brought Brendan Rooney. So before we just talk about the whole transfer portal guys that they brought, let's talk about those two guys first, because O'Malley will probably start at third base, and then Rooney will probably get some time at catcher.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing, is bringing over guys that he's familiar with. And I know that with Sean Stifler heading to Notre Dame, the VC head coach, some guys want to go where they're most comfortable with. And I think those guys, you look at Marcus O'Malley was a 274 hitter at VCU, a freshman, made the A10 all-rookie team. That's a guy that with good contact, get the ball all across the field. He showed it in his first season in college baseball. You're going to see him get time at third base. That's exciting to see, bring over a guy that's an experienced player, at the hot corner. And then Brendan Rooney, another experienced catcher, who I know that they have a lot of catchers. I think Ronnie Medina will get some time there with Craig Polidar. And then I think one more is, if I'm correct from ECU, is Evan Chainer, if I'm correct, that's how you say his last name?
Yeah, Evan Chainer. Yeah,
I know he's a pitcher. He's the only pitcher that came over from VCU. But I like his experience. I know he has a solid ERA within college baseball, and I think he brings that to this pitching staff that was definitely going to need some of that heading into this year.
Yeah, and we talk about then the transfer portal, a couple of Miami guys. We have Mikey Rosario, who I believe will also be part of the outfield to start opening day. Mm-hmm. You have Henry Wallen. And then a Miami-Dade guy. Wow, we got some interesting, very diverse transfer class. If you just want to get into the guys that they brought in there, just in general.
Yeah, they brought a lot. 17 new faces. The bulk of their core that they have is returning, but they need a lot of the faces from the pitching side and the catching position. So I talked about Ronnie Medina. A lot of JUCO guys, Ronnie Medina, Nick Patelli are the guys behind the backstop. And then Ryan Gita, who is going to be DHing and first baseman with Agent Figueroa. He's a guy that comes from Indian River. who does have some pop in his bat. He's a typical DH first baseman guy they brought in. A lot of different transfers for backer role. I do think a lot of the guys coming in are going to start, but I think a lot of the pitchers that you see are going to make an impact. Whether a guy CJ McKenna from Pittsburgh, who's, if I'm correct, this is his 6th year of college baseball, or 5th year. He has a lot of time under his belt. Jackson Ritchie from Virginia Tech, who had some sprinkling appearances in the ACC. Then you look at a guy from Fordham, and if I'm correct, it would be Cameron Knox. Make sure I get that right. I know Cameron Knox's name. Cameron Knox from Fordham's another guy from there.
Fordham.
And then also adding, I like this one a lot, is Cesar Franco from Chipola. Chipola is, if you didn't know, is one of the top JUCO baseball programs in all of the nation. Like, they're one of the best. And Franco, who I think he's a native guy. I'm right here. I'm saying I think he's a guy that I'm excited to see a little bit. If he gets playing time, I think he'll kind of stand out to some of the FIU fans.
Yeah, and I'm just going to take a quick look at the stats if I find them here. So, yeah. No stats. Interesting.
No stats.
All right.
As Kevin's doing a bit of digging here in his end, I forgot to ask you, Johnny, going back to last year for just 1 second, I promise we'll cut it off here. Who was your MVP of the team last year?
Oh, I mean, hands down, it was going to be Alex Sanchez. I mean, he led all the categories, hit over 270, had over 12 or over 10 home runs, had a couple triples, doubles. Like, he hit really good for extra base hits. We all know he had the walk-off double for opening day.
Oh, yeah. I saw that video.
I was there. We were there. We were there. That was an insane broadcast.
No, but that was a fun game. I remember that game.
It was after a weather delay too.
Yeah.
That the game started to get absolutely insane. All right, that's it. No more 2022 baseball talk. That's
Alex
it.
Sanchez. Yep.
That's it.
We have to mention. I quickly want to mention about the transfer portal. So I think you're best to explain this. Dante Girardi and Figueroa both went into the portal, or was it Sanchez and Girardi?
So from what I read, I know that it was Dante and Adrian Figueroa. Obviously, that came with the uncertainty of who their head coach was, so they put their name in the portal. And that was around May. So right when Coach Melendez left, they put their names in the portal. And I think it came as maybe a little surprise to me, but I think realizing its expectations, because you want to see what's going to go on within the landscape of who the next coach is. But then once Rich Ridden came in on board, people really, bought in, and they're back. And I think, so they originally transferred and then took their name out of the portal. But really, they pretty much stayed. They, I think for about a month or so, they put their name in, but they came back.
Did they receive offers or no?
I don't think so. If you look at, I remember looking at that list back in May, hundreds of names were in that portal. I mean, you look at how the landscape is with transfer portals, everyone's going anywhere. But I don't think they got offers from the time being, because I think it was in the summertime. I think that they just kind of put their name out there just to see who the next coach is.
Yep. All right, Jake, it's time for you to shine.
Oh, is it time for news break? Hell yeah, it is time for news break. Everyone's favorite part of the show, maybe not, but it certainly is one of my favorites. It's where we go over some of the biggest stories in FIU athletics as of late, and just FIU in general. Just a quick checkup on our lovely university. Let's start off with this. In the world of FIU football, former special teams coordinator Ricky Brumfield has been hired by the University of Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Now, during his time at FIU, he was also an assistant coach and outside linebackers coach. Brumfield joins the ACC again, as prior to his time at FIU, he was the special teams coordinator of Virginia Tech, the Hokies. Brumfield is now the second coach to leave FIU's staff this year, the first being offensive line coach Greg Austin. Now, the second story I have for you. FIU Beach Volleyball has announced the teams and locations of their annual Surf and Turf Invitational, which is set to begin on March 17th at Loomis Park in Miami Beach, Miami Beach, right on 8th Street and Ocean Drive. If you may recall, the Surf and Turf Invitational was canceled in 2020 due to COVID and due to limited travel affairs. It was hosted directly on campus in 2021. Now, 10 different colleges will attend the Invitational, including ranked opponents such as USC, TCU, and FAU. And in addition, Florida Gulf Coast, North Florida, and Jacksonville will also all be in attendance. Last season, Panthers beach volleyball posted 22-11 overall record, and they were 4-1 in conference play. FIU finished the year ranked number 16th in the final poll AVCA in 2022. And my final story has to be one of my favorite stories that I've covered in Newsbreak. FIU has debuted a brand new beer called Sunblazer Golden Ale. Even the name sounds kind of exciting. It's this golden colored beer with what I was told has a citrus taste. Makes sense. Was crafted by the Miami's Beat Culture Brewery, and a portion of the proceeds from buying the beer goes directly back to FIU. Now, the Sunblazer Golden Ale will make its debut at the South Beach Food and Wine Festival down the road, but it'll also be available to buy at the Chili's and Vicky's restaurant and cafe, respectively, on campus here at MMC, and it will also be sold at most sporting events on campus, including opening day tomorrow at the FIU Baseball Stadium. So that is your news break. And are we all old enough to maybe chug a beer tomorrow?
Give me 5 days. 21.
Oh, 5 days. Oh, okay.
There you go. Give me 3 years.
Can designs are cool, like the FIU Sunblazer Golden Ale. Who would have thunk?
Honestly, my thing is the packaging or the
I think it's worth getting just to have the can. It looks.
I just
cool.
want the can, man.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll buy one just for the can.
Maybe.
All right, Johnny, we got to talk 2023. The team looks pretty good, I would say. And I want to ask you, let's look at the offense first, the position players, before we talk about what we think is the biggest slack right now, which is the pitching. I want to ask you, who stands out to you in the offense? We know Alex Sanchez. We know Dante Girardi. Outside of those guys, who stands out to you?
Yeah, so out of those two who had really good leaps in 2022, I think a guy for me, is I think a Marcos O'Malley, somebody I'm interested to see. I know we talked more about him prior. Transfer guy, proven hitter. So I'm excited to see the way he plays out. I'm really excited once again to see Adrian Figueroa. He's been a guy that he's a contact hitter. He's an old school type of lefty hitter. He had a down year last year, and you look at his numbers, he hit around 266.
Yeah.
And so that's a, if you call that a down year for him, I mean, he has to bounce back is hitting like around 280, 290. So he's a guy.
Cooper.
Yeah, he reminds me of a little. I mean, yes, I guess same type of idea. Coop Loop, yeah. But I think a little less power than Coop, I would say.
Yeah.
He's definitely an old school guy. So I gotta go. Figueroa, and then also Robert Sotolongo. He's another traditional hitter who just hits for contact and stuff. Those are the two guys are the returners, but I'm excited to see this year. Also.
Yep. So aside from pitching, one of the let's say weakest links of the FIU baseball team last season was their batting prowess, or I should say lack of prowess for the most part. Johnny, how much better do you think that the FIU's offense this season will be compared to last year?
For me, I think it's going to improve. I think you look at what they have. You look at look at the outfield. Sotolongo, he's a proven bat. Sanchez, you saw what he did last year. I think he'll even get better than what he did last year. You bring in a guy in O'Malley who's kind of getting to established hitter, and Steven Odina, who's going to be a junior, so obviously his talent will keep getting better. Girardi, we talked a little bit about, who hit from 215 to around 255 this last year, and Figueroa and some of the catchers they brought in. I do think this offense is better. I think it just matters a lot about how everything can work together. I think we saw last year the offense, they had a lot of guys were it was random times. Some guy would go on a hitting streak, and one guy who was hot, who was really cold, and nothing was coming at the right time. And I think that was a problem why they had really inability to score runs. I do think that this year it really depends how the lineup's structured, but I do think this team has more contact. I do think though it's going to be a lot of small ball and a lot of moving base to base, runner to runner, and trying to get runs in. I think this team is going to be much better improved into 2023.
Yeah.
Now I want to start talking about the pitching. We know it's going to be Ryan Cabarracas. Is that how you say it, Johnny?
Cabarcas.
Cabarcas. All right, all right. So he will be the opening day guy. He'll be the Friday night guy. Who goes after that? We kind of spoke about this off air. It's up in the air, but if you could kind of give us an idea of what we may be seeing these next couple of days and the rotation moving forward, because there's some pretty cool names in there. We have El Duca's son, you have AJ Puck's brother, but outside of that, there's not really much outside of that.
I do know that I think, let me see, make sure it was. I think it was released. I think if you look on FIU Baseball, make sure. I know it was released today. Yeah, so we got Cabarcas starting tomorrow. We got Kristen Santana starting for game 2, who's a 6-year guy, and then Angel Tiburcio will be the Sunday afternoon starter for FIU. And all those guys are all veterans. Santana, this is a 6th year playing with FIU, started in 2018, and then Tiburcio's into year number 5 with the program. So a lot of veteran guys. I think that's what you want, especially for Coach Whitten's, the rotation is having experienced guys take the bump to begin the weekend into the beginning of the season.
Yep.
So we've looked at the starters, a lot of excitement there, but now let's talk about more of the relief side of the pitching staff and the bullpen. How's that looking? And what are some of the names that really stand out to you at this very moment?
So looking at the names, we talked about, I think you guys hit on it, Orlando Hernandez, El Duque's son. I do think he'll get a really good appearance this year.
Hopefully his dad's there tomorrow. Hopefully the dad's there tomorrow.
Oh, for sure. I know he'll be there. But I got him. I do think, though, he's also tapped into maybe a midweek guy as well. So we'll see what how that works. What was I going to add? CJ McKinnon, who from Pittsburgh. He's a 5th-year guy. I think he'll get some runs in the rotation. Jackson Ritchie from Virginia Tech, Richie Pena, who is in his 3rd year. Even Owen Puke, AJ Puke's brother. I knew that he had some good time in the Northwoods League as well. I do think, though, it's kind of, with how relief is, it's hard to see who goes where, who goes what. But I think those guys, I think a lot of the transfers that Coach Whitten brought in are going to be a factor, in some of the guys that are sophomores like Owen Puke, and maybe Junior Hernandez will get a lot of opportunities out of the pen.
Owen Puck is tall, man, 6'4".
Yeah.
His brother's like 6'6" or 6'8".
Yeah.
So I mean, it just goes to show.
I'm interested. I think he'll be there. I feel like Owen Puke AJ will be there, and hopefully Luzardo. I'm interested. Like who's going to be there? I know AJ wasn't there last year.
Because I know they have training tomorrow. Maybe they'll go in there.
Well, I think one of the days he'll come out. He has to.
The reason to get there early.
Saturday is expected to rain in Jupiter, so watch out for that day.
Yeah,
maybe they come down.
All right, now let's look beyond tomorrow to the rest of the 2023 campaign, because it's never too early to make some way too early season predictions. So a few episodes back, Kevin and I analyzed the schedule as it dropped, and we'd like to know your thoughts on it as well. Kevin, I don't know if you have the schedule ready.
Well, I was going to do it until I realized that our Twitter's locked. So
yeah. For those who are unaware, our Twitter is going through some issues. So that's why you may be catching us on the Lemon City Live Twitter, as well as our YouTube and Facebook. So to all the viewers there, we can't thank you guys enough, and promise we'll get it fixed up as soon as we can. But
let me start looking for the schedule.
But we've all seen the schedule, Johnny. I know you've seen it 100 times. And just what games do you think stand out the most that FIU fans should mark on their calendars right now?
Yeah, let me get it up on my phone. So I think tomorrow is a big one. You got to show out, support the team. Opening day, head coach, Rich Whitten's debut.
Oh, by the way, there's a giveaway. You're right. There's going to be a hat given out to fans.
Coach Russell during the first pitch. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's going to be exciting. I do think maybe checking out the Missouri game. You bring an SEC school in, so maybe that's a 4-game series, getting a Power 5 opponent up. And then I'm interested in the Harvard series. Harvard, they may be Ivy League, but they're a very good Ivy League
yeah.
team. They played very well with University of Miami last year. So I'm interested to see how FIU plays against them. And then obviously University of Miami. You look at they have 4 games against the Hurricanes. But Miami is destined, not destined, but I think they're priming for a big year considering how they fell short a lot last year. So that's going to be a fun 4-game series to watch over the course of the season. It's always fun with the rivalry. And then also to watch is Dallas Baptist University. They, for the first conference game of the season, Dallas Baptist, if you look at, that will be the 17th to the 19th of March. This is their first year in Conference USA. They're one of the top mid-major schools on baseball. So I'm excited to see how FIU approaches that. And then also FGCU as well, Florida and FAU. Those 2 teams are always going to be competent. So yeah, I think those 2, and obviously the UM game is always exciting.
Oh yeah. And I want to emphasize just how cool it is to play a team like Harvard, an Ivy League school that I mean, when it comes to the Ivy League and Conference USA, they're on opposite sides of the spectrum, so you don't see matchups very often in pretty much any sport. So
you wonder how much they
use. Yeah.
You wonder how much they use those analytics at Harvard, huh?
Yeah. And as
a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And Johnny, you talked about some of the familiar faces that are recurring opponents, not just in Conference USA, but they're just teams that FIU seems to play a lot in baseball. Florida Gulf Coast, Bethune-Cookman, Stetson. These are teams that usually FIU baseball has good records against, and I'd like to see them continue that this year, not break anything, and just continue to see the success they have had against teams like Bethune-Cookman and Stetson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are important, and especially looking at the schedule. You look at every week there's a midweek matchup. That's something that we didn't have last year. We I think we had maybe every other week. You can add that there were not a whole lot of midweek opportunities for this team. But you look at it, Bethune on Tuesday, for Gold Coast on the week after on a Tuesday. You got a midweek really every single week of this year, and that's going to be huge for this team. Is how you approach those midweek matches, especially when you get to conference play. Those are really this Conference USA for look at baseball and basketball is very good, and we see it now. So I'm excited to see how FIU attacks the midweeks. Obviously when you play a team like Miami or Florida Gulf Coast, it becomes an important game for you. So I think it's just the way of how you go about those Tuesday games that kind of are the weird times because you really focus on the weekends, but they always sneak up on you, and sometimes these games are really important, especially when you play a team like Miami.
Yeah.
Johnny, how excited are you really about FIU playing Miami 4 times this season? We've seen what the Canes have done to the Panthers the last few years, regardless of if they play here or if they play in Coral Gables. So are you really thrilled that they're playing them a whopping 4 times this year?
I mean, I'm the optimist. So I think from a standpoint of
how did I forget Johnny was the optimist?
I know.
Come on.
They got to this. Obviously, UM is a team that is going to be dangerous this year. However, if you're able to play them 4 times and you have a chance to make some noise and maybe get a victory, steal one at FIU, or steal one at Coral Gables, that's huge for your momentum and confidence. So I think it's good for a team that's in a way is rebuilding. They still have pieces, but they're still going under new coach. I think it's exciting for them. It gives them a challenge. But I think you can look at one way. Obviously, it's tough. Miami is solid, but at the same time, you can make some noise and try to pull off an upset. Because sometimes Miami they've shown at times to kind of get away from those midweeks. I know they lost to FAU and other teams, so FIU can take advantage of that if they want to, and they can. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm an optimist, so I'm excited for some Miami games.
Yeah,
UM is a really, really good team, John. I mean, especially when you look at MLB Pipeline, you take a look, maybe around the 5 to 10 range, you have the third baseman, Yandy Diaz, who is an absolute stud. That guy's probably going to go in the top 10 of the draft, top 15. Maybe he ends up being a Marlin. We'll see. So that is a good possibility there. And I want to ask you, Johnny, the Conference USA, the ever-evolving Conference USA, we see teams like UTSA, FAU gone, and new teams like Jacksonville, Sam Houston. how does that mindset change for maybe you personally and FIU baseball and the chance now that they may have to really get up there and make a big push for that Conference USA title?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the schedule. This baseball now, right in this current time, it's going to be very difficult. It's so competitive. Talk about Dallas Baptist is very solid. Tennessee is always consistent. La Tech is very good. UTSA and FAU, those are very, very good teams. I think they're going to be top of the conference, and then even Charlotte, they're a regional team. So I think you look at FIU, they have a lot of competition ahead. Looking into next year, I do think that I don't know how to say it. The competition is less next year. I think a lot of teams are kind of in the playing field. I got it. I think Western Kentucky is in the same spot as FIU. I do think that next year FIU has a chance to make some noise, but I think this year to wrap up this conference and the way it is, it's going to be very competitive, and it's going to be really getting and churning out wins, which is going to be difficult for all teams in Conference USA.
Yep.
So, Jonathan Mayer, what players on this roster do you actively see? Do you really believe have a good shot to go pro on this?
He's an optimist, so he's going to mention a lot of guys. But let's
yeah, way. He's going to hit the over for sure.
I mean, look, I think Alex Sanchez has a shot.
Yeah,
I do think that was smart for him to come back for another year. I know that there were some rumblings of maybe him having a chance last year. But I do think, though, if he's able to really put up a solid season with some power, he's able to get extra base hits. I think he has another year to go pro. Looking at him, he's one that in the preseason, he stands out to me the most to have a shot at pro. But really in professional baseball, I mean, you can agree, Kevin. It's like you really don't know. Like you can see one guy that you don't think and just get signed for like a professional deal at the end of the draft. So I think Alex Sanchez is a guy that I can see getting drafted. Maybe a Steven Odina. He's somebody I think if he's able to really stick out and put up a little bit better batting average and get some more stolen bases and the defense is there, I think he'll have a chance to maybe get some rumblings to get drafted. So I think maybe Sanchez is a guy I'm really intrigued for. Maybe even Steven Odina is more of a under the radar guy for me.
Figueroa doesn't stand out. I mean, just the 2 seasons he's had first base, the way he hits nowadays. I mean, when you look at first baseman nowadays, just look at Anthony Rizzo. He's one of the best to do it. The guy, he hits for power, but the amount of contact someone like Rizzo is currently hitting for, especially last season, it's crazy. I mean, that's something that will definitely translate to the big leagues. And maybe you see him in more of a DH type of role if he moves up to the big leagues.
Yeah, I only think for Figueroa, I do think, though, I want to make sure I'm saying what I'm, was correct. I think with the strikeouts, that was a little bit of a surprise for me. If I'm correct, let me just look at the numbers. He hit 261 with 24 RBIs, and he struck out 26 times in 43 games. That's a little bit number. I know 26 times,
a little high.
A little high.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that maybe should be a little bit lower, in my opinion, but I do think, though, if he's able to kind of limit the strikeout rate, I think you have a chance to go pro.
Yeah. Yep.
And then finally, I'll take this question, Jake.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to steal one, but
go for it.
We got it. FIU and Miami, the Marlins, have some pretty good ties. I mean, when you look at it, Mike Lowell back in the day. Now you have, Luzardo, who you mentioned went. Pablo's gone to FIU, to support the team, obviously not play,
Yeah.
But talk to us a little bit about what ties we may not even know of that the Marlins have with FIU in terms of maybe players' sons, players that, are homegrown. Who knows?
Well, I think one thing is Jeff Conine last year was the assistant coach.
Yeah.
That was one thing. Seeing, Mr. Marlin, obviously now back with the Marlins, but that was something, it's almost like a fever dream in a way.
What was he doing there? He was an assistant coach?
Yeah, assistant coach, hitting coach for the team.
Didn't work.
It was just crazy to see. BA said Mike Lowell was a guy. AJ Puke, his brother Owen's on the team. I do know one thing is the Marlins and FIU, they used to play exhibition games.
Oh yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
or for like in like March for like so FIU. I know one time FIU they played at Marlins Park in the first year of the ballpark. They were one of the first teams to play a game. They played at Roger Dean's.
I remember that. Yeah.
They played at Roger Dean.
Yeah, I think it was last time they did was 2015. So it's been a while.
I remembered the UM and the Marlins one, and I think UM once beat the Marlins. I think that was the year of Lewis Brinson and that team, which was.
I remember that. I would love to see that again. FIU and the Marlins, maybe some. I think right now would be, in my opinion, an awesome time to do it because you got a lot of the guys in the WBC. You got a lot of the obviously with a lot of the minor league guys coming in. I think it's right now a great opportunity to do it. Honestly, you don't see it as much now. I feel like college teams playing professionals teams, but it's always a cool thing to see that because you're playing guys that you aspire to be. So I mean, for me, I would love to see my favorite team play the college I go to.
Yeah, the connection is there, by the way, because the Marlins, like many other sports teams in the South Florida area, have those like those discounts for college students kind of days where if you're an FIU student per se, you can get a cheap ticket. So the connection is there, man.
I brought $5 tickets with your college email. I know the Marlins do, the Florida Panthers do as well. So you can get some nice cheap tickets to some baseball games this summer.
See, I didn't. Oh yeah, they did that now. They're doing that, right?
Yeah.
That's great, man. All right, we gotta now move on a little bit from baseball, and let's quickly recap what's going on with basketball just before we wrap this up. All right, so I guess the last time we spoke, when was this, Jake? They were on a kind of like a 2-game losing streak, or was it right before the losing streak?
Yeah, it was around that time in the losing streak. That was, I believe, episode numero 8.
Well, anyways, let's just go from. Geez, man, it's been a long time then.
Yeah. I mean, our
game.
last 2 episodes have been busy, yo. We got AJ on the show, AJ Ricketts, and we got Coach Mike celebrating the.
So I'll just recap from Western Kentucky on. They lost to North Texas. They lost to UTEP. They beat UTSA. They beat Western Kentucky. They beat Middle Tennessee. They beat Charlotte. They lost to UAB, and they beat Louisiana Tech, and they lost to Rice. Yeah. Johnny, you were at the Rice game. I was at FanFest. Recap us that game. What went wrong for FIU?
That one was really tough on Saturday. FIU, they were it was a back and forth game in the first half, and then the Rice, they won on a 16. They were up 16 with like 7 minutes left in the second half. Panther was going to run. They cut it down to 3, like with a minute and a half left, and then Petar Kovacevic, he had a chance to tie it up. FIU was short on the mark. And they lost that game. That was a tough game to lose. Just coming back, from the deficit. Yeah, a tough game at home to lose to get to a really good Rice team. But now you're on the road they play on Saturday to Middle Tennessee, and they stand at 500. So, but I was talking, with AJ Ricketts. We were talking about this is probably FIU is one of the easiest schedules, to end the year. You got UTEP and UTSA. Yeah. FIU, they can beat those teams at home, and then you got La Tech and Rice on the road. If FIU is able to split that, so I think FIU is a chance, but still, this team is a tough game to lose. But I still think they have a chance to maybe pull off a big upset on Saturday in Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
How hot is the hot seat for Chris Ballard, for Coach Ballard, for Jeremy Ballard? Sorry.
I mean, I don't like, talking about these things, But,
I know.
Oh yeah, the optimistic man. Why are you forgetting that?
We got to mention it, Johnny.
Yeah, but I think you look at Coach Ballard and what he's able to do. Obviously the first 2 years, 19, 20 wins. They've, a tough time losing. They lost 9 games in 2020, 21. Last year, 15 in the season that they even talked about Coach Ballard and his staff that they were disappointed with, and now you're sitting at 13 wins right now. But still, this program, 13 wins or 14 wins, that's big for them. 13 right now, they're not satisfied. They know they can win. I do think, though, that Coach Ballard has what he's been able to do with conference play with his team has been really tremendous to see. He obviously has a lot of young players, so it's going to take time to build that chemistry up, and we've seen it now. But I do think that he's a great coach. He's a great person to talk with. Really, really nice guy. But he's taken this team to new heights, and I think that Coach Ballard, if I'm correct, I think Coach Ballard has his team and making some noise in the conference tournament.
Yeah.
They're dangerous to make a run.
To put this into perspective, the last time FIU men's basketball finished the regular season with a winning record was 4 years ago, pre-COVID. They're 13-13 now. They are 7-8 in the conference, 11-5 at home, 2-8 on the road. With a 13-13 record, with 5 games to go, this is going to be Coach Ballard's best chance in the last few years to get that coveted winning record to end the regular season. And like you mentioned earlier, Johnny, they have been blessed with some opponents that they're familiar with, that most of them they have experience beating earlier this season. And as they push for a nice spot in the Conference USA tournament, it's and this is pretty much for every sport there is. It's better to get into a tournament hot than to enter it cold. And they can do that. They can actually do that, which is great.
And I think FIU is one of those teams that you look at underdog stories, they really have a chance to be that team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you would love for them to get that 5th seed, because something AJ was mentioning to us, Jake, if you remember that podcast, is that if FIU goes into the top 5, I think they get a bye week. So they have time to rest up and get ready for their next game. But I mean, maybe sometimes you don't want that bye week. Sometimes you're hot enough.
No.
If FIU is able to win these final couple games, you're on a hot streak to enter the tournament in Dallas, and you feel really damn good about your chances to maybe upset one of these top teams. FIU almost beat FAU this season once. They beat UAB. They beat Charlotte. They beat top dogs in the Conference USA. Now do it in Dallas. And if you're able to do that, you feel pretty good entering the tournament. And you beat some other good teams, Middle Tennessee, a middle of the pack team, La Tech, another middle of the pack team. You feel pretty good where you're going. So let's hope.
And that's a big if too, because South Florida college basketball has been insane. University of Miami, then you have FAU down the road. It's why not FIU? Why not the Panthers?
Yeah.
That's the
although UM is killing it. UM is killing it. They destroyed Duke the other night. If anyone even heard about that game. So in the spirit of baseball, Johnny, let's talk some Marlins. We got to talk Marlins. I don't think we've ever spoken about the Marlins on here. Maybe once. Quick shout out.
I think we briefly mentioned it. Like when Sandy got the Cy Young, we gave him a shout out for that.
Shout out.
We never went in depth.
How you feeling, Johnny? How you feeling about those 2023 Marlins? I mean, we've seen clips already out of spring training. We've seen the moves Kimeng has made. I mean, you got to be pretty satisfied with the moves they made so far.
Oh, I'm so excited for the season. I get like this every year. I'm like, I did this last year, 2 years ago. I'm like, we have a solid team. We can win 85 games, and then we lose. We lose 90. I'm like it every year.
Whoa.
No, but this year though, we have a good rotation. We got Sandy in the top. I think Luzardo is gonna have a really good year, and then I think it all pertains. I was talking to my friend. I think it all pertains to health with this team, but the rotation is really nasty. They stay healthy. I like get Arias and then Segura. You bring in Jazz to center. And then, I just think this team, if everything goes well, I think this team can get near 500. I'm just excited for the rotation. I love pitching. And I love that the rotation is so nasty, and I'm excited. Obviously, Stripes puts up great content, so it makes it more exciting. Seeing spring training and everything, but
a shout out within a shout out.
Shout out.
I like that.
Is spring training can get kind of like by like the 3rd week, it gets so boring. I don't know if with you, it's like I get tired of it. It's like it's like every day. I want real games. I like seeing them games that count.
I think it'll be like that this year, where it's gonna get boring, because last year we had the
baseball classic will make it a little better for me.
100%. And last year
that's gonna be awesome.
Last year we had the lockout, so it kind of felt long, and I mean, it felt great to have baseball back.
Yeah,
you didn't care about what baseball was, as long as it was baseball. You felt good. And in this case, we had spring training baseball, and I mean, you look at storylines. And I was filming a podcast which is dropping tomorrow, Fish Stripes and Filter. Shout out to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not shaming that. No shame in dropping that one, but
no,
we're talking about spring training storylines. We love the plugs, yeah. We're talking about spring training storylines, and one that I mentioned, and maybe I want to get your take on this, Johnny, is the possibility of seeing a 6-man rotation. That has to be a big storyline. I mean, you have Sandy, Luzardo, Cueto, Rogers, Braxton, and Edward Cabrera. You have 6. Either you make a competition for that final spot between Trev and Brax, or you have to go 6-man rotation. And I mean, you have Yuri Perez, who we just saw today, throwing a bullpen. So I mean, that guy's very, very close, and I think he's as close as maybe cracking that opening day roster, in my opinion. I don't really think he needs much time in AAA. He'll get time. And then you have Dax Fulton, Jake Eater, and Max Meyer will probably come back next year. So I mean, do you just go 6-man, Johnny? What do you think?
That's the thing. I think you look at they all the 6 pitchers have proven. I do think though the only one that I'm considering about is the Trevor Braxton. That one I think would be a little more of a storyline for me is seeing how Trevor Rogers pitches in Braxton because obviously Trevor he bounced back at the end of the year, had some solid starts. Garrett, he's a consistent guy where he'll give you 5 and a 2/3 for 6 innings, enough, But those two I'm interested about. But if it's a 6-man rotation, I mean, that makes it better. It makes it even more dangerous because you have all these guys. I think, it helps with health with a guy like Sandy Alcantara. So, we saw he pitched every day. If you can give him, 6-man rotation, gives him more health. And for a lot of those guys, I think that was a problem last year was the health. That was a big issue. We just had Sandy and Pablo, but that really was it. So I think it may be helpful. I don't know. I know people are so on it, but I think it'll be positive for us.
Now you have to think of this. When you go into a 6-man rotation, you're losing a bullpen spot, you're losing a reliever, and Sandy won't go out there every 5th day. So it's a risk. And we saw the Angels doing this last year, I believe. And I think Houston did it as well at some point. It wasn't too successful. I mean, just in terms of, the logistics of it, not the pitcher itself, but just the logistics of how it went down. And I mean, I personally wouldn't mind a 6-man, but you're having Sandy out there every 6 days. And I don't think you really want that. You want to try to get Sandy out there as much as possible. I mean, this guy has the chance to go back-to-back Cy Youngs, Johnny, when you really look at it. Will he do it? Who knows? But I think he has a good shot at it. And I guess final question, how do you feel about going into the season, man? I mean, what is your win total for these Marlins?
See, I've asked so many people. I was talking to my friend last week. He's a pessimist. He was telling me they'll win 60, 90, 60, 70 wins.
They won't. I'll tell you this much. They will not lose.
See, I think this year that they have some established bats. I'll say around I'll say 79 to 81. They'll hover around that.
I was expecting something completely different. All right.
You were thinking 85 wins?
I was like, this guy's going to say 85.
No, I'm better now. I think because I've been humbled a little bit in these last 2 years. Because I last year, I thought they would win 88 games, 85 games. I'm no joke. I know.
I said 78, dude.
I now you know what? I'll temper it. I'll say 70 to 81. I just think that the East is a little better. Is very good, but I think now that if the offense is average, they'll hover around that.
I'll tell you this, and Jake may know this. We had Duke Johnson on Fish Stripes 2 weeks ago.
I saw that.
Legend. Dude, first of all, that was an amazing podcast. I highly suggest you all to listen to that. And I want to say, he said the Marlins will finish second in the NL East as his bold prediction. If the Marlins finish second in the NL East, Duke Johnson can own this podcast. Duke Johnson could own Fish Stripes, and he could do whatever he wants. But man, that was if Duke Johnson.
If that happens, then Duke Johnson will personally go and stiff arm every single person on Fish Stripes, including yourself.
Dude, honestly, because I have him winning 78, 80 games. I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat as you, Johnny. Where I think this team could really be the Milwaukee Brewers that we saw this past year. As long as the Marlins are in it until the very, very end, just like we saw with Milwaukee and Philly, you have to feel pretty good about where this team is at, especially with the first-year manager and Skip Schumacher, which I'm very excited to meet. I did not see him at FanFest, unfortunately. I am very excited to meet him on maybe Sunday. I'll go. Who knows? But we'll see. And I'm very excited with that staff. You have John Jay, Juan Pierre getting involved, Jeff Conan. You saw him in a full uniform today, getting involved, helping out. So, I mean, this is going to be a very exciting team. They're bringing back a lot of guys. I mean, we just saw they brought in Terry Collins today to be a consultant. Some people like it, some people don't. I personally like it. I like that hiring. So, Jake, we're about to hit the 1 hour marker. I think we will wrap this up. Any last news or notes you want to mention before you?
Yeah,
finish it off?
something I wanted to say about the Marlins themselves, and I wanted to hear Johnny's thoughts. Is that the Marlins just have it tough with the division they're in. The NL East has, like you mentioned, it feels like every team there has gotten at least somewhat better. Just on the grand spectrum of not just the NL East, but just the NL in general. What tier do you think Miami is on right now?
Ooh, do you mean like standings? You mean? Or
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, I mean, I don't think no. I mean, I like Duke Johnson, but I don't know about number 2.
No, they're
I'll-
not gonna-
I think we all think we're fourth in this division.
Yeah, I've seen so many things say they're going to be number 4 in front of, like, I think Washington was it.
I think I know what John is about to say.
Or I think
I
think that the Phillies will slip. That's what I think.
There we go. I knew you were going to say that. Yeah,
that's
they
what
have a
I think.
shot.
Either we go fourth or Phillies slip.
Yeah.
We go fifth.
You have to keep this in mind. Bryce Harper is going to be out for the first 3 months of this season because of some injury. He got surgery and something. He's not playing for Team USA. So Miami has a good chance to bite. The Mets usually met at the end. We saw this last season.
No, they're going to be great in the first half.
They're going to be good in the first half, but I mean, if Miami fares well against the NL East for some reason usually, and if you were able to beat the Nationals 13 times, because you're probably going to be able to, maybe you will beat them 10 times out of the 13. But I mean, you got to feel pretty good about where this team is at in terms of how they'll fare in the division. Now, looking outside of the division, you have a team like the Diamondbacks who got a lot better. That team is going to be very fun to watch, and it's going to be very, very good. I mean, they just had a National League candidate for Cy Young, Zach Gallen, former Marlin, out there. You make the trade for you make the trade for Gabby Moreno, who's now going to be your catcher. You bring in Lourdes Gurriel. You made a lot of moves this offseason. You got to be very happy where they're at. Corbin Carroll is going to be a great prospect. Look at Chicago, brought in Dansby Swanson. You made some adds to the rotation with Jameson Taillon. You brought in a nice reliever, Michael Fulmer. You Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a team to watch. Many may say I'm joking around, man, but I really want to drink that Kool-Aid for the Pirates. They are a good team in the NL Central. They have some very nice young players. Brian Reynolds, if he ends up signing an extension somehow, you had O'Neal Cruz, Ronzi Contreras. You brought in some nice, rotation pieces.
I'll say 1 year.
All right.
I'll say 1 year.
1 year.
I'm not sold on them yet. I don't know.
Oh, maybe next year, but this year I think they'll put up a fight. I mean, they finished like 3rd in the division, dude.
Also, yeah, that division that
division sucks. So you could really go with anyone to win that one.
Yeah.
And the Reds are another team who are going to be pretty all right.
I think the Reds are better than the Pirates, in my opinion.
The Reds are actually better. Yeah, maybe too. Their pitching rotation is very nice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is where we're going to
yeah. Let's quickly give the Marlins their due. In spring training for Miami begins in 9 days. On Saturday, February 25th, they'll play the aforementioned New York Mets at 6 p.m.
Is that Port St. Lucie? I'm sorry. They'll play at Port St. Lucie, and then the Grapefruit League opener for Miami at home. Roger Dean will be the next day, February 26th against the St. Louis Cardinals, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So spring training will carry on all the way until late March. Then we get into the regular season where Miami will have a home opener to begin the year at the Lone Depot Park on March 30th at 4:00 against the New York Mets.
Justin Verlander versus Sandy Alcantara, Cy Young versus Cy Young, unanimous, both.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun. I mean, I expect you all to be out there.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Speaking of seeing us all out there, again, we can't thank you guys enough who have been watching us on Lemon City Live Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Hey, we're all going to be at opening day tomorrow for FIU Baseball. I believe first pitch is at 6:30 p.m. Again, they're taking on the University of George Mason Patriots. It should be a fun one, and yeah, we'll all be there. So if you want to say hi,
Miami, FIU usually fares very well against George Mason. They have the better record historically. They beat them last time 5-1, and I believe it was just last year. So
yeah,
should be a good game.
Any final thoughts, Johnny, on what the fans should expect for FIU as well as the Marlins? Give them both some love, Johnny.
I think this team will be fun to watch. I do think that the style of the offense will be fun, and I'm just excited. I think always just when you have baseball back, or even softball too, and for college, it just senses spring is here. I don't want to say the end of the school year, but like, like we got baseball a whole new time, and especially now with like basketball still here and they're playing good. It's like, I don't know, these times are awesome. So I'm excited for baseball back tomorrow. And then for the Marlins, big Marlins fan, and just always going to root them on. But we got to get some W's.
What I want to know, Johnny, is there's no Marlins stuff in the back there at your dorm.
It's temporary. It's a dorm. I can't.
Well, come on.
I mean, let me see. I got some.
You see Flex Joseph's dorm?
He has.
Are you in Mike McIntyre's former dorm?
I wish. I'm in an unspecified dorm at FIU.
Okay.
Leave it at that. All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching.
All right.
Kyle Russell throwing the first pitch tomorrow. Snapback hats as the giveaway from Jake, from Johnny, myself. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out and paws up.